Hey everybody, welcome back to Carrington's Corner, and this will be part two for the Why Did I Get Married review, and this one will be, of course, about Why Did I Get Married too. So, let's get started. So this movie, we end up going to someplace warm, as Angela called it when in the first movie. She said, why couldn't we just go to Jamaica or the Bahamas, someplace warm and not cold where it's snowing and all this other stuff, even though the view is nice. So they end up going to where Angela suggested, which was the Bahamas. So, and as you already know about the first movie, there's always going to be some type of secret that's going to come out on the trip. Don't know from which couple, but there's always going to be a secret that comes out, and this movie is no different. So, of course, at the beginning, I'll just go and talk about Terry and Diane. So, at the beginning, you see a major shift in their relationship. You see Diane with a fresh cut, like she's always been put together, but you see now that it's just elevated on a higher level. And if you do see me look at my phone that's up here, it's just, has my little notes of things to discuss and talk about for this movie on there. So if you just see me looking at it, like scrolling up or down or whatever, that's my notes. I'm so sorry about that. But you see that there's a major shift in their dynamic that is more touchy, it's more loving, it just seems like it's they're happier, even though I don't think that they weren't happy. I think that they had major issues of intimacy and being physically, but not physically touched, but physically, like mentally and emotionally, like touching each other, which correlated um, which correlated on the outside because the inside was being touched. So which was very nice. So I like the fact that she finally was able to give Terry the child that he wanted, which was a son. So now they have a daughter and a son, which I thought that was really cute. But yeah, so it just seems like at the beginning it's just very happy. But once we move on to them actually going to the Bahamas and being together, we end up finding out that Diane may be having an emotional relationship with another lawyer at the firm. And so that ends up changing Terry and her dynamic of being together and wanting to be together. And I think that Diane really does love Terry. And I think mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that she loves him. I just think that when you're around someone who shares the same job as you, work on similar cases with you that you see pretty much every day, it's like having a work husband. And I think that was her work husband. And her saying that he would make her laugh, and like, it's just, I think to her it might have seemed like it was innocent, but emotional cheating is, I think, worse than physical cheating. And I think Terry ended up getting that, and Terry ended up understanding that, and, realized that no, no. Because when you're in here with me, you're thinking about him. And that's not even if y'all haven't done anything, that's still portrayal to the marriage. And he was right. He was absolutely correct about that. But I don't think Diane really saw that she was cheating because she hasn't done anything. And I think men think that too, was like when you're like texting and calling and dressing up nice just to go to work, when before you just you just put, like, she didn't just put anything on. She's a lawyer, so she looked nice. But, wearing something more like fitted and tight and like showed off everything right, that it made the display of dressing up for somebody and not dressing up for him. And I think that when the end of the movie came and she ended up apologizing and she ended up making it clear that it was only him that she loved. It was only him that she wanted to dress up for, even if it was just a lapse in judgment. But I think that the fact that she didn't do anything, she knew that what she had at home was good. So let's go and we can talk about Angela and Marcus. So at the end of the Why Did I Get Married movie, you see that they came together. Angela stopped drinking. Angela made sure that she kept herself composed and just showing off who she is, not the influence of who she is. But at the beginning, it never amazes me that they end up going back and forth between the yelling and the screaming and all the unnecessariness, and then go back to the lovey-dovey, because that's who they are. It's never going to be changed. It's never going to be resolved. So for them to come and go to the airport, I thought that it was going to be great and amazing. They were going on the airport, the same airplane that Terry and Diane were going on. So Terry and Diane go, and they go first, and it's just all like, I'm just ready to go. Like, they got their little, beachy type feel on, whatever. Then you can hear Angela and Marcus from all the way across the airport. Like, it's them. And they're arguing, and that they're having their issues and everything like that. So you already know that there's going to be some drama. Angela thinks that when Marcus and Terry go up to the, what they call it, not the flight attendant, but the airport attendees, I don't know if that's really what they're called. I'm sorry, I don't want to disrespect anyone who's watching, but the people who are at the desk before you go and you board the plane, go to talk to them and see, like, hey, like, is the flight delayed? Like, what's going on? Like, is the flight coming on time? Da da da. And so the girl's like, I watch you all the time, and my mom and me are like a big fan, and we watch you on his sports television show. And Marcus, Marcus can make dumb decisions, so he plays along with it. I think that he's just trying to be nice, and I think that he's a very friendly person. So to Angela, she thinks that it's too friendly. So, and she's like, can I, and then the flight attendee is like, can I get your autograph, whatever, and then he's like, yeah, sure, why not? Angela, if Angela sees it, she gonna pop off. So what does Angela do? Angela goes all the way across there and says, Marcus is flirting with the lady behind the desk, and he is married. Go and get the lady behind the desk, Marcus. How about that, Marcus? Get the lady behind. And it's like, Marcus needs to take some notes out of Terry's book. He needs to take it. Terry is very respectful. He comes up there and he says, hey, like, you're born in the plane that's about to come, whatever. Like, is it late? We've been waiting here, whatever. And, like, all this other stuff. Marcus didn't even talk to the woman before she said anything. Marcus should have took what Terry said and be like, yeah, we're just, we're trying to figure it out, whatever. And not actually play along with it, because it just, no. Like, you're a married man. Like, there's just some things that you could be nice and you could be cordial, but him being extra friendly at the airport, and that you're your wife has these things where she believes that she thinks that you're gonna want to be with somebody else or all this other stuff. Like just you should, you should just know this off the bat. You should just know this off the bat. Okay, so once so during their plane ride there, we see that Sheila and Troy get there before everybody else, right? And so Sheila and Troy are having financial issues, and Troy moving from Colorado to Atlanta is a very big step. And he was already established in Colorado. Like, he was a sheriff, like, he was doing whatever he wanted to do. And to move to another place, it's very hard to be able to find a good job there. Like, it's just very hard. Like, you're not going to find it like off the bat. And I think that he was hopeful, and he was staying hopeful, and he was saying, positive about it, but he knew that it was going to be a hard journey. And for it to be this trip in the middle of it, I think that he wasn't feeling that at all. I think that she wanted to be with her friends. This is the annual, like, why I get married trip. Like, we gotta go, like, whatever. And then he's like, well, we don't have the money for that. Like, we don't have the money to be on the trip. And she's like, it's just, we need to be around our friends or whatever. And, like, he's like, no, these are your friends. And I'm only around them because you like them. And I think that that's the only role that I play in this. So I think that when Sheila mentions that they spent their last to be on the trip, it hurts a man. Like, men are very prideful, and like, if they can't provide for their woman, like, it's a whole different mindset that you have to accumulate to and like change. And I don't think that Sheila understands that, because she was with a man that had money. Not the richest man, but he had money to pay for the bills. And for Troy, it's like he feels less of a man because he can't provide. So he ends up shutting down. And I think that with him shutting down because he doesn't want to say anything that's like rude or disrespectful, whatever, I think that hurts Sheila, because she knows that when a man shuts down and doesn't say anything, he could be thinking about going to be with somebody else. He could be thinking that I'm not the one for him. He could be thinking that there's no use for me to be around. That's what happens when he shuts down. And I think that they both have to realize each of each other's sides, because they are married, and they have to realize that Troy's not shutting down because he wants to be with someone else. He loves you, Sheila. He loves you. And Troy needs to understand that when he shuts down, Sheila thinks that. And that he needs to understand that he needs to explain to her, hey, just because I'm shutting down does not mean that I don't want to be with you. Doesn't mean that I don't love you. It just means that I need to have time to cool off so that I can rationally understand what to tell you and how to tell you and how to be open to you and how to say these things, because I don't want to say anything that's rude, because I know that in your past he said a lot of rude things to you that shut you down. And if we're both shut down, it's like we can't get anywhere. Like, there's a wall that's blocked. Like, you can't get anywhere. And we'll go to Patricia and Gavin. So Patricia and Gavin come in, and they come in after Troy and Sheila. And you can tell that there's a shift in dynamic between them from the first movie and the second movie. So the first movie, they were very lovey-dovey. They were like, I love you more than all the words that are in the books. And they were like, I love you. Who loves you more? I love you more. I love you more. I love you more. Like, he was very supportive, like, after that. And I don't know how the shift broke down, because it seemed like they were doing just fine in the first movie. So I don't know how Tyler Perry did the shift between them being good and then them being on the verge of breaking up. But you could tell that there was a shift in the dynamic, and you could tell that they were trying to keep it together because that's all they did was keep face all the time. They kept face, and we couldn't really see what the true issues between Gavin and Patricia were. Like, we knew that Patricia had issues. We knew that. We knew that she wanted to be perfect all the time, and she couldn't. And we thought that Gavin was just helping her out to understand that she can't be perfect all the time. Like, she can't live in this box of perfection because no one's perfect. But when you see that when they come, it's like they're distant, they're not together, and then continue on with the movie later down the road. During the trip, they're arguing, and Diane comes and asks if she's okay, and she's like, no, get some sleep, I'm gonna go get some milk or whatever. And Diane's like, I want to come with you, and she's like, no, don't do it, like, we're fine, we're okay. And at the same time, they thought it was Marcus and Angela, but it was really Patricia and Gavin. So it's like, where did that break in those 3 years happen to where you switched from being a, I would say, good couple, because I guess there's no like great couples, but they're good couples, into being on the verge of a breakdown. And we really didn't really get to see what stemmed those issues. Later on in the movie, we knew that Gavin had a drinking problem. We knew that Patricia smoked. We don't know if she smoked all the time, but in the movie she did smoke. And we know that when Gavin is drunk and he says things, he does things, he breaks things, and he gets very violent and touchy with her. And I don't know if that's the reason, but the only thing that I didn't get and that I didn't understand is that what made him go to drinking instead of going to his partner. What made him break things? What made him curse at her? What made him grab her, touch her? I don't know about hitting her, but he did grab her. He did try to get her attention and doing all of that instead of going to her as his wife. I don't know where that breakdown happened. And I don't know how long it was that she was putting up with that, but it just wasn't right. I don't care whatever was going on, that maybe he felt that he was responsible for how successful she became, and she didn't give him the credit. But it's like, I don't know if that was just at one time, but in the last movie, he gave her, she gave him the credit when she received that literary award. She says, I want to thank my husband Gavin. I love him so much. He's my huge supporter. And I would have thought that that was a good support that she gave him, but maybe it wasn't enough for him. And I think that when you talk things out and word things out, then everything could be different. Everything could be better. But when you don't talk things out and you let, drugs or alcohol or other people get in the way of a 2-person, 3-person, whatever type of relationship you have inside the relationship circle, that's what messes everything up. And I just wish that we would have known what the breakdown was in them being distant or coming apart. And then, there's always some scandals. So Mike ends up coming on the trip because he has a timeshare. So he comes on the trip knowing that Sheila and Troy are going to be on the trip, causing some mess like he always does. And And it's like the men decided, they were like, okay, just because he came on the trip this time does not mean that he's gonna mess up the trip. So he's just gonna be there. He's not gonna be in the mix. Like, we'll invite him to some things, but he's not gonna be like in the mix. So when there's like things to discuss, like like what they had in the movie, like a little morning meeting. I'm not sure what time it was, but a little meeting that they had about him. They were like, we're not gonna have him break our happiness. We're not gonna have him mess up the dynamic of the trip. But at the end of the day, them Marcus, when they end up going on the fishing trip, Marcus ends up spilling the beans that Troy does not have a job in front of Mike. And it's like, no, Marcus, don't. You're not supposed to say anything about another man that he's not there to say, to back it up or to refute it or to defend himself. Like, that's not cool. That's not cool at all, especially in front of a man that was his wife's ex-husband. Like, no. So I really didn't like that bit of the movie. The fact that he saw Sheila in the kitchen because she was about to cook or whatever, and he's talking about, I miss you, like, I made a mistake, please forgive me, like, da da da. And she's like, no, like, you didn't we just have a conversation at Patricia's award event? Like, didn't we have a conversation about the 80-20 rule? Didn't we have a conversation about you saying that you're sorry and that you shouldn't have done this and all that stuff? We've already had a conversation 3 years ago. You need to get over that because I'm married. And she's like, Troy likes my cooking. Like, no, like, that's not how this works. And for him to be like, I was your first and all this other stuff, and like reiterating what he said in Patricia's literary bit, like, it doesn't make any sense. And the fact that she went on to explain that she was like, I did love you, I did care about you, but at the end of the day, like, it's over, it's done. And he's talking about, don't you remember the apartment that we got together before we got the house and da da da. And then, like, for her to go back and be like, I remember that hole in the wall, I remember that black eye you gave me, I remember that lamp that fell on the floor. Like, her comeback was amazing, because it's like, that, for her to say, like, that was a yellow apartment, or yellow because he thought it was orange apartment, and she was like, but I remember there was like blood on the wall because you tried to punch me or something like that. And it's like, don't you get that you were? And it shows a different side of the relationship, because in the first movie, we've seen anything about abuse. And the fact that she mentioned that, like, further fueled the fire that that it was over, that they were really stayed together for too long. And the fact that he thought that he could just come back and everything's cool, like, you were abusive to her, you broke things, you cheated on her, like that. Those three things, it's reckless behavior. And it was just not cool. So I'm glad that she was like, well, you remember this, do you remember this, do you remember this? And for her to tell him to get out and he left, like, it was just perfect, because at the end of the day, he can't be coming back after you realize that a good thing is gone, because that's what they always say, that you realize something's good when it's gone. And that's not Sheila's fault. That's not Sheila's fault at all. So, the night of the bonfire, preparations for the night of the bonfire, they end up meeting a married couple who's been married for like 50 or so years. And they invite them to go because of the whole ashes It was windy, so their friend's ashes went all the way over to Angela. Angela freaked out. She was like, "Oh my gosh, it's ashes!" And she was wiping it off and everything like that. And they were like, "We're so sorry. We're so sorry. Like, is there anything that we can do, whatever?" And they were like, "No, she'll be fine. She'll be fine." And so they ended up inviting them to the bonfire. And at the bonfire, they're all telling their why they get married stories. And I think that that was really a turning point for the movie. So everybody mentions their why they get married stories, and I think that the the older couple coming in and talking about how they were married before, and then they end up coming together and they were around each other, and they realized that at that moment that they knew that they were going to be together. I think that was a reflection of where they could be in those 30 or something years past where they are now. So I think that was good. But the turning point event was when Gavin and Patricia went after Sheila and Choi. And they end up, and Patricia ends up saying that, I love you very much, and I love Gavin very much, but we have decided that we'll be getting a divorce. Everybody is blindsided, including Gavin. And it seemed like you would think that when she said we, it would be mutual decision. But as we realized later on through the movie, that he was like, "So you decided that to say that we're gonna get divorced, and you didn't even run that by me? Like, we're supposed to be a united front, and you didn't run that and say, hey, we're gonna mention that we're gonna get divorced tonight." You didn't mention that at all. And Patricia couldn't even say anything. Like, she couldn't even mention anything. And to think that it wasn't a mutual decision was very heartbreaking for me. It was very heartbreaking for me. Because they were that couple. They were like this. Like, they didn't have any holes in it. It was just like this. And to see that they're like this, it's like, no, 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 no. It was just hard to believe until you end up seeing the dynamics of Gavin's alcohol, seeing the dynamics of Gavin breaking tables and breaking glass and putting his hands on Patricia and saying foul things that he was saying, throwing alcohol on her. It was just like, no, we can't do this today. Like, we're just not gonna condone putting your hands on a woman, like grabbing her, clutching her in the arm, throwing alcohol on her, like having it seem like you're gonna throw the glass on her. Like, we're just not, that's not what we're gonna do ever in life. That's not what we're gonna do. And I think that everybody, because they were going through their own issues, that they couldn't see that Gavin and Patricia need our help. Gavin and Patricia are suffering in silence. And I think that because they kept it so private, that they had the facade where they were okay. It wasn't too bad, but they were okay. And then the fact that it was just bad was terrible. It was really bad to see that unfold like that. Yeah, it was just terrible to watch. And I'm gonna switch gears and go back to Angela Marcus. So Angela hears from the next door neighbor. She's a nice lady. She's like, psst, psst, can you come? I gotta tell you something. She's like, I got the kids or whatever. And it was like, yeah, I got the kids or whatever, blah, blah, blah. She's like, no, I won't. It just take a second. She says that I hear noises during the afternoons. And she's like, my kids? Because, my kids, I can go talk to them, whatever. And she's like, no, it's not noises that kids make. And, the innuendo, whatever. And she's like, it's the same time, Monday through Friday, or whatever she said. And it's like, well, I'm at work. And then I gotta go pick up the kids. So it's not me. So if it's not me, then... And then the lady's like, uh-oh, whatever. So she's like, go and watch the kids, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So Angela ends up going down to Marcus's work. And she's like, Marcus, who is the lady that you have in our bed from this time to this time when I'm at work? And Mark is like, I don't have anybody, blah, blah, blah. And like, Angela just goes on and on and on. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, are you actually coming up with facts, or you listening to the people that's in your own head? And he does all this other stuff. And she's like, well, you're about to lose your wife, and da-da-da. So then she's up leaving, and like, he ends up getting like confused, and he's like, gosh, you could have messed up my job, whatever. And so Angela goes and she decides to investigate, and she ends up finding out that it's the yard keeper or somebody like that with a girl that's in the bed or whatever. And she's like, you better go and wash these sheets that you got right here and all this other stuff. And then she ends up apologizing to Marcus, and then they end up getting a better understanding of why she's like this. And she's like, I think you're gonna leave me for some cheerleader. And it's like, I'm grown, like, I know what I want, and you're my wife, and that's what I want. Like, a man takes care of his responsibilities, a man takes care of his wife. Like, I'm not looking for no cheerleader. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And I think that you realize that her mindset is still like when they were in college versus now. And I think that she still believes that he's gonna go out and be with someone else and not her. And I think she has realized that he's with you, Angela. Like, he chose you to be the mother of his child. Like, he chose you to get married. Like, he chose you. Like, that has to mean something. That has to speak volumes of where you are in the relationship. And so I think that right there, I'm hoping that it was a shift, even though at the end, like, he has another phone because she took his phone or whatever, and then they get in an argument about that. But yeah, when the end of the movie happens and Gavin ends up getting into a car accident for getting into a fight with Patricia, it's like, gosh, life is really short. Like, wife can be taken away at any moment, and you could realize that if you haven't dealt with the things that you dealt with here on earth, you won't be able to deal with it in the afterlife. You won't, like, it will be always something that's like holding you down that you're gonna have to deal with in the afterlife. And that was a really sad thing to see, because I wasn't expecting for him to die. I wasn't expecting for them to like kill his character off like that. So it was very sad to see, but I'm glad that in his death it brought the couples together in the end. Like, no matter what your issues are, you can work through it. It's not that big of a deal. It's not. And I think that's what Patricia was saying. She was saying that it's not that big of a deal. You can work it out. Like, you're still here. Y'all still standing. Y'all are still together. So y'all can still work it out. And I think that was the moral of the story, is that if you're still here, if you're still kicking, if you haven't kicked the bucket yet, if you haven't had your last breath, then you could still work things out, and you could still make things better for you here. Because everyone deserves a better life. So, let me know how both of my part 1 and part 2 videos were, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.